the intent of the standards.
It is part of the standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ira?
Back to the snow, just a question, would it be a violation? If the snow, because the main roofs all pitched to the side yards. And if a lot of snow came off the roof, thinking of winter, we do have winter. I mean, if a lot of snow came off those roofs and it was storing itself over the property line, is that a violation?
So essentially is snow shedding onto adjacent properties.
That's my
So
question.
that's, I don't know that that's necessarily a violation. The building code does have requirements that you cannot, that you have to have guards in place to ensure that snow does not shed onto sidewalks, walkways, streets, and other potential pedestrian or vehicle ways.
So in that vein, thinking along those lines, is there then a calculation that they've gone through to show that there's this much roof and this much open space below it?
Yeah, so again, whether it falls onto an open space, I don't know that that's a specific code requirement. It is a code requirement that you have to protect snow shedding from walkways and sidewalks. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, there is no walkway or sidewalk underneath it, it's just grass.
So then it's probably okay.
Okay.
Yep, go for it.
Does the town of Frisco? I know we have no code requirements, and we know we have no historic. Does the town of Frisco want that building to stay?
I mean, and the historic resource survey, yeah.
Go in this situation. We have the Frisco, we have the historic resource survey that we adopted. And that identifies the building and shares what, the characteristics are of it that might make it worth saving. But like I said, we don't have regulations in place that would prohibit somebody from tearing the structure down if they so choose. And so we offer incentives. If you want to, like for the Deming cabin, if you want to save it, you can go over density, you can go over height, you can reduce your parking. There's setbacks, you can do whatever you want, but we don't have anything that says, no, you cannot tear this building down. So
This is a follow-up question and not necessarily related to this project, but. Is there any conversation at council level? I mean, we're rapidly losing the rest of our historic buildings. And I can envision, as I look down Galena, a number of other buildings disappearing really quickly. Is there any conversation happening about this?
If I could operate a doodle poll, the planning commission is gonna have the opportunity to have that conversation with town council coming up here when we pick a date at the end of this meeting. Okay. So, the one question I'd maybe ask on the historic side is, what was the historic value of this structure? I don't recall specifically.
this one was the Mumford family.
Lund family, Lund was in this and. You had a number of other names on it. Let's see, it's in your staff report.
Resource inventory is more related to the people that may have lived there at one point in time and their value to the community rather than a historic structure itself. Is that more or less?
Well, the barn was probably the most historically famous, but a lot of the buildings that we have, they're old, but the architecture isn't significant because it's been modified over time, if you will. So, like, for example, it wouldn't be eligible for a historic register. That's not to say that we couldn't have our own local historic register and put the buildings on that and protect them for ourselves and for our history. Buildings have historical value beyond architecture, right? So it's just deciding as a community what you want to save and how you want to save it. When we did the community plan and we asked community members what their appetite was for creating regulations to prohibit, the demolition of some of these buildings, we didn't get strong support for more regulations on historic structures. But if that appetite has changed, like Don said, I think the town council and having that conversation at a joint meeting is a good way to get the ball rolling on that.
Great. There aren't any priorities around this at the council level prior to us talking to them.
It's in the community plan that we value these historic structures, but there's nothing there's been no talk of creating code regulations for it. And there's nothing in the code today. Yeah, sorry, beyond the incentive. So far, we haven't seen since the beginning. Anybody try to put it down.
I just have a quick question. Can you get a sheet A1?
I apologize, I think this is the slowest one. Free roll, okay, A101.
So if you can zoom in on like the upper right corner of the building there a little bit. There's a property line indicated and then there's a dashed line indicated that's set back in from that building crosses. What is that line that we're looking at?
That line is the setback and I definitely got an updated plan from the architect because it looked like, sorry, I'll zoom in again.
Well, and those walls all have roof overhangs too, right? The roof overhang has to be within the setback
They-
as well, right?
They do, but if you look at the roof plan, and this sheet might be in conflict. But I did get a new drawing from the architect showing all of the foundation walls inside of the setback and all of the roof inside the setback. But this one does appear, this is either an old sheet.
That's the one we're supposed to approve, right?
No, it definitely,
Have something.
yeah,
more?
when, you know how it goes, when you submit these drawings, I get drawings from the engineer, I get drawings from the architect. And
Yeah.
I also get drawings from a landscape designer. And so the plans given to me from the architect don't usually have the property lines called out and dimensioned.
Okay.
So I'm going off of the surveyed the surveyed civil plans. Find those, but I agree, and I did catch that when I was reviewing it, and I do think it's probably worth maybe adding a condition that that all
That it needs to
foundation.
fit in the
Yeah,
setbacks?
for sure.
It's not just foundation, but roof overhangs and stone veneer and everything
Yeah.
else. Okay,
So if you look at the setbacks on the civil plan,
perhaps this is something we can get an explanation from.
yeah, and the windows,
Yeah.
Are
I see
over.
it there, but that other plan is kind of funny looking.
yeah, it is kind of funny looking.
Okay. All right, well, we'll continue that question.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Ira and Jessica next.
All right. So as development in our town moves along, we now see we're moving on to one frontage is a dirt road. The alley is dirt. So is there any conversation about a building like this on a dirt road? Is there any indication that there would be a requirement to contribute to paving an alley?
That was not on, this was,
I think that's the other.
that's the other application.
This was not on the alley?
Okay,
No, this is on, this is on a paved alley.
This is right next to States on Galena, so it's
Oh,
paved
okay.
right behind Loaf and Jug and stuff.
I'm done.
Okay, Jessica?
Yeah, just a clarifying question for staff in terms of the bulk plan encroachment. So it says you can, that's permitted with planning commission approval. I mean, the whole thing is with planning commission approval. So is this like a subjective standard? I just am looking for clarification on.
It would have to
Why?
be- You'd have to make a finding in the staff report, so like, as part of your approval, planning commission finds that the bulk plan encroachment, is not over the building height and is architecturally important. to the-
Significant.
Yeah,
So we have to find that that roof line is actually significant in the context of this building.
Yep.
Okay.
like visually, architecturally. All of it.
There's specific criteria that we could.
I did see those. Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions? Mine's a question I've asked every time, but maybe if I ask it, it will continue to be important. Decks are not included in snow storage.
That is correct.
And because we continue to see rooftop decks that, where the heck are they gonna put snow that it doesn't leak into their units? So that's just a question, maybe a comment more so, but no further questions for me. If there are none others, I will turn the floor over to the applicant Ms. Drink, if you'd like to come to the podium.
My name is Ed Enk. I reside at 3074 High Road in Evergreen, Colorado. I'm also a resident of Frisco, as many half weeks as I can, because I love working up here and living up here. And Susan completely stole all my thunder. So, I don't have much other than to kind of respond to some of the comments you guys have just come up with. Maybe in addition to what Susan said, we did do some additional things. We definitely listened to what you guys said the first time around. We took off the diagonal braces because there was a comment that they were a little busy. We removed part of a wraparound deck to kind of aid in decrease kind of the mass of the building. By taking away the spiral staircases and the parapet walls we had, I thought we also reduced the mass of the building a bit. We removed the storage closets on the front, which were also protruding from the building and making it look bigger. And we changed the palette because there was a comment that it looked too much like the ones down the street. So we lightened it up to a kind of a lighter gray palette. Those were, just some of the things. We've met with the Kreml-Meyers again, and we continue to discuss the project with them. They're the neighbors to the east. Thank you. So we're doing that. Historic wise, we've looked at taking the building apart and in panels so it could be reconstructed. The problem is it's even hard to tell what's original and what's additions because there are a lot of little additions done to it and it's been changed so many times and there's not much left of the building once you take the additions away. And then the only thing we could come up with was storing it somewhere and then trying to find somewhere to move it to. I know that there are a couple of other buildings that are currently in storage and that everybody's having a difficult time finding anywhere to relocate these buildings to. When we did Mount Royal Lodge, I know we donated one of the buildings and worked really hard with the park right next door to make our building blend into the park. So it is on our minds. We think about it. We worked hard with the Kreml-Meyers to save their little shed that's encroaching considerably into this property. And the Kreml-Meyers ultimately decided they'd rather have a new small garage than try to move that existing one because they looked at it. Everybody's looked at it and it's just going to fall down when they try to move it. We're continuing to work with the Kreml-Meyers. They were going to be here tonight, but John got stuck in Denver with car repairs. We invited them to come because they've been such a participant in the whole project. We're currently looking to do a waiver on their driveway because Public Works asked us to curve a driveway into that little garage that we're doing for them. And they've called us back since then and said, we reconsider under the circumstances, we reconsider letting you come in straight into that spot so that we're in that waiver process right now. Dumpsters. I'm mixed on dumpsters, but with garages, it's just seems like it's less obtrusive if you put your trash can out for me, and 4 units, because they're right there, that seems to work. We have relocated the transformer in consultation with Excel. So there is room for all that. The parking turning radiuses were based on a great big Suburban, and we had the civil engineer actually do the little computer program to make sure they can turn into those spaces. Snow storage, I was going to say that there is a requirement for 8-foot minimum, and we know that and we meet that. And the fact that we take up the whole lot, that's a central core zoning, not a mandate, but a permission, because there is no lot coverage for central core. That's something that you guys can think about doing and changing the bulk plane issues, but we work hard at staying at least within the regulations. I'm forced by my developers to kind of maximize to my ability without being ridiculous, their square footage and obviously their profits. Setbacks, I know that all our overhangs are within the setback. Susan picked one up that I missed and we fixed that. So if you want to make that a condition of the acceptance, you know, and at Susan's review, that's fine with us. Other than that, you know, a mirroring of the buildings, we have redone the sides of the building, the side elevations, so they're not a mirror to the back. On the next project, we're gonna look at, we took your design, your thought on that process to heart and really made them separate units. I think that's all I have to add, and certainly open to any questions you guys may have.
Thank you so much. I will open the floor to questions. Andy, would you like to start with Mr. Hank?
No, I don't have any questions.
Lena? How did you come, decide upon the colors?
We had earth tones to begin with. And there was a comment that we were too much like some of the other ones in the block. So we just went to a lighter palette. There's Telluride stone has a lot of wonderful selections in stone. So we went to one of their lighter stones. And kept the gray barnwood that Pete Campbell has been so successful at doing around town as, you know, one of our main accents. And then do some contrast with our dark metal.
Okay.
And stay within the palette of the city's requirements.
So talk to me about the bulk plane encroachment, and you went
Sure.
from no bulk plane encroachment to a bulk plane encroachment, which sort of frustrates me.
It's what you're looking at there is an attempt to kind of break up that big roof. We were looking at that 412 pitch roof as being, you know, you can't see it from the street. It surely shows up there in a front elevation, but you can't see it from the street just because there's so much else going on closer to you. So we actually added the two dormers, and they look like more than dormers at this point, don't they? Do we have a 3D view of it? They were added specifically to kind of break up the mass a little bit from the side. So none of those are great. Maybe that lower left one shows that little dormer popping up just to give it the roof a little more relief. That can be cut back if that's something you guys feel strongly about, but there it is. And it was literally added, and it has no function whatsoever other than to kind of create a balance within the architecture and give it some relief on that side. If you look at that side elevation. So that's it.
So my second question is if I look at the north view and the south view, and they are mirror images of each other.
I'm not sure they are anymore. Oh, north and south. That's front and rear from
Yeah.
this one.
No, north and south. So the garages. When I look at them, they look like mirror images of each other.
Okay, is that actually a code requirement back and front?
We talk about duplicity. Let me pull it up and read it to you.
Because you never see them together, obviously. You have to drive down one street and then remember what it looked like as you drive down another street. It's not like you're going to look at it from the front and see that it's a mirror duplex, which I think is the intent of the code.
So it says duplicate building design prohibited. Building designs that are duplicate or are substantially similar in terms of roof pitch, building articulation, materials, colors, and building elements, that's within 300-foot radius of the property. Where a project contains two or more building or units, not identical units, the building design shall provide architectural relief from the duplication of buildings and units by utilizing a variety of windows, decks, balconies, or exterior facade composition.
And in the description there, they're showing a front elevation that is mirrored versus one that's, you know, clearly a single unit.
But the code doesn't specify that it has to be. It just says the duplication isn't, or,
Calling for architectural relief from the duplication of buildings, so,
which,
but I don't think it means duplexes, so I think it would apply in this case is my interpretation.
What would apply, that it's not allowed?
That
Or that
you
it's-
need to provide architectural relief.
Got it. Any other questions? Jessica, questions for the applicant?
I don't know, this might actually be a clarifying question for staff at that point, but I'll let the applicant speak to it as well. Just the building colors where it talks about no color may be used as the primary of the primary color of the building that exceeds a chroma of 4 on the Munsell color chart. What does that mean?
So it's kind of getting the colors, they start off as like muted, neutral, kind of natural tones and get more intense. So like he couldn't give us a hot pink house or a really red.
Got it.
Red couldn't be your.
Okay,
primary
your
building facade.
Got it, okay,
A measure of brightness.
I get it. I thought it was saying like you can't have one color be the primary color, and I
No.
did feel like there's a lot of gray on this building, but thank you for that clarification. Yeah, I don't have any additional questions for the applicant.
Ira, any questions for the applicant?
Not at this time, thank you.
I do not as well. So thank you very much for your presentation, and we will move on to comments and
public comment.
public comments, sorry. At this time, we will open the application up to public comment for this agenda item only. I'm seeing no members of the public here in the chamber, so if you are online and wishing to make public comment, please raise your hand. I'm seeing none, so I will close the public comment portion.
I will say for the record, we did receive a public comment.
Do you want me to read this?
I don't think so. It is entered into the record.
And what about Patrick's
That's
comments?
probably for, as part of your discussion as planning commissioners discussion. Somebody.
Raise their hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Craig's iPhone, you have the floor. If you'd please state your name, address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes. The floor is yours.
Hey, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Craig Peterson. I used to own 212 Galena. Currently live at 9D 1-2 Lurkenland in St. Thomas.
Hi, Craig.
I think the project looks great. I think the Campbells are going to do a good job. That's why I sold them the property. Point a note to Ira and a couple of the members. I tried for years to sell that property to the town to do some affordable housing, and your mayor cannot see past his nose to take this project on. So this is what you're going to get on Galena now, which, you know, it's kind of how it's been going for a while. I'm glad to hear that John and Claudia are okay with them moving the building over, because I know the property lines have been an issue for years. As far as the old house goes, bulldoze that thing. You know, my grandfather physically built that house himself 75 years ago. There's not a straight board, straight wall in that place. Not worth saving. As far as the old shed in the back, you know, that one's got some history, just like Kramelmeyer shed has history. When the train tracks went down Galena Alley, you know, those were sources of commerce. Today, they're not. And, you know, Frisco's had its opportunity for decades to do something about historic structures, and we just kicked the can down the road. So same deal. Those things can just get burnt down, just like the stuff next door on the Johnson property did, just like Russ's property did. It's what, you know, what's been created with the current events in Frisco in the last 10 years. So anyway, just a little history for anybody on it. But I think the place is going to look great. I think Campbell's going to kill it. And I'm glad to see them taking the project on. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome.
At this time, if there's no other public comment, we will close the public comment portion and move on to commissioner comments. Andy? So do you want us to read this for the record?
I think you could certainly read Patrick's for the record, because that is a commissioner.
All right, I will read Patrick's comments on 212 Galena First bullet, the project still appears too large for me from the previous iteration. It is pushing all aspects of the bulk plane limits to the detriment of the design aesthetic. These materials are very light in tone. It is my opinion that the builder will appear extremely whitewashed given the balance of the sun-faded bleached wood siding combined with the lighter monochrome stone. Perhaps warmer tones on the stone could be utilized to better ground this building. This project at the very lightest end of the color palette for Frisco. Though efforts have been made to vary the architecture from unit to unit, there are very minimal differences combined to a single roof pitch choice on north and south. Additionally, the east and west sides that are right on top of neighbors are extremely simplified and still appear to me be larger, plainer, and repetitive with the window design and placement. And finally, Patrick's final comment, I believe this project still needs additional work. That was from Commissioner Gleason. At this time, we will turn it over to you, Andy, for your comments.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Patrick's first 2 points. I think that, you know, in terms of the bulk plane and pushing all aspects, it does do that, but that they're allowed to do that. So I don't know that there's much we can do about that at this point, other than if we decide we have a problem with the bulk plane encroachments, which personally, I think the way they explained it, they really are architectural elements. And so I don't really have a problem with those bulk plane encroachments. I do feel that it is very matchy. Donna, we're still here.
That was a submitted comment from her.
Yeah, you know, I sure would like to not feel like I'm looking at 4 identical units as I look at the outside of this building. And I feel like from every angle, it just does say, these are all mirrored, matched units, window placements, roof lines. You know, there's some subtle variation, but to me, it's a lot of duplication, and I would like to see more effort put into trying to get these units to look a little bit different from the outside. If they're the same floor plan inside, you know, that can still become different architecture on the outside, and I would love to see a little bit more differences designed into this building, a little bit more variation, personally.
Yeah, I agree, and not just, I mean, there's duplication of the building elements themselves, but I feel like I'm looking at the same building that I've seen elsewhere in town, and keeps popping up just this ginormous fourplex that takes up, it seems like the same design pops up all over town. I don't have a big issue with the bulk standards encroachment, other than I don't think it really provides substantial architectural relief. I don't think it's doing much. So I just don't see a reason for that encroachment if it's supposed to provide substantial architectural relief. I do also believe that it's not meeting that one standard about architectural relief from duplication. And I'd go as far as to say that some of the facade standards aren't being met, because I mean, there's no way that that's really compatible with adjacent structures or the neighborhood. This, like, when you see it next to the little building that's right next to it, it's gonna have the same effect. And I'm glad you brought up that Mount Victoria Lodge and what it does to the historic park. I think it's the worst example of a ginormous structure dwarfing a small building next to it, rather than trying to be compatible with it. So, and I also don't think those colors work. Comments.
Thank you, Robert.
Well, first, I'll give you my positive comment. I really appreciate the fact that there is no spiral staircase on this building. That was one of my comments the last time, and I appreciate you listening to that. I really struggle with this building because I think it violates the code in the duplication, the mirroring of the front and back. I don't like the bulk plane encroachments just because I don't think it adds anything architecturally, and we open ourselves up for other people trying to do bulk plane encroachments, and that's always a problem. The other thing is that we did some work when we did 116 to try and get,
That's
Come-
estates on Glen, right?
yeah, to come from the large development of 13 to kind of step down just a little bit before you hit the next set of buildings, which were only 2-story. I'm not sure we got a lot, but we got a little bit. It doesn't feel like we get anything in this building. This building looks like it's even more massy than the 13 units. So we're actually increasing the bulk that we're putting, which gives me some problems to say. The facade standards say that the intent is to ensure that the facade design of a development is compatible with Frisco's small mountain town character, which I have some problems thinking that this is small mountain town character, and provides human scale to enhance the walking experience in the neighborhood. So the walking experience in the neighborhood is now going to be that we're going from 2 stories to a 3-story to 13 units that are 3-story big to this building, which is even bigger in mass. So I have a huge problem with that. And I think that if we keep going down this road, we're gonna get people that are gonna push every envelope that we ever designed, and we're not gonna have neighborhood standards. So I apologize for kind of going on about this, but I think this is important, and at some point, we gotta take a stand and say, enough's enough. So that's my view.
Thank you. Jessica?
Yeah. I guess a couple points, you know, I would just question if the landscaping plan is approvable by the fire department. You know, sometimes it's not to put trees that close to buildings. That would just be a question, nothing I would, you know, make a condition or approve or deny on, but just something to raise. I guess, yeah, the whole bulk plan encroachment finding is, I think it's just new for my brain to wrap around, to find this to be a significant architectural feature. I don't know if I'm there on if it's a significant architectural feature. I think it does help in the sense that the building is very large, so it helps offset the building. But the fact is, I'd rather, you know, maybe the building wasn't as large, so then we wouldn't need that bulk plan encroachment, but I also understand the developer or the perspective of a developer and what they're trying to do. Yeah, I guess the question is if this meets code. I mean, that's the ultimate question on this. You know, I'm gonna keep listening and keep understanding. It does seem that it meets primarily the code. I do think there are some concerns with the duplication of the facades. Yeah, those would be my comments. I think just a little bit concerned about meeting the finding of the significant architectural feature.
Thanks, Jessica. Ira?
I would thank Robert for his comments. I agree with what's been said. I don't doubt that the building meets code, but I think what's missing is the spirit of the code. And that's kind of something that I don't know we can legislate upon, but the building has this shoehorn quality that it's been expanded, blown up to the maximum allowable. From a marketing standpoint, which isn't our concern, there is no difference. I don't think any one of these units would sell for a different price than the other, which to me tells me that there is no feature, there is no outside architectural specialty, there isn't a greenhouse, I mean, they're just, I don't want to get off the code, but I think they're so identical there that it's anybody who would look at this and drive the 2 streets would think they saw the same building twice, and then they would go home and think they're on drugs because they're on 2 different streets and it's the same building. So, I mean, you know, that's kind of how I see it. As far as the palette, you read that somebody just read about the small mountain community. I don't think a gray black palette is anywhere in the mountains to speak of, my perspective. I mean, I think it's an urban palette. That would be how I would characterize it. So I agree with a lot that's been said. That's my little add-on.
Thank you. My comments would be that I sat here and listened to the homeowners on Galena say they didn't want it to become granite. And we chose to change the code and they didn't want that either. So, I mean, does this fit in the code? I'm not sure. And I'm not sure if we hold it, the developer's feet to the fire to change this, but it needs to change if we want this historical preservation or this mass and scale to represent our character, because to me, this does not say old Galena. It says this new Galena where we maximize everything. And I agree that, sure, the central core, you can have, you know, this lot coverage and this big density, but I apologize, I missed the sketch plan on this, so I'm a little behind the eight ball. I went back and read the comments on that, and I think we've gotten there, but just like the estates on Galena, they came with a footprint the size of Whole Foods. And we said, can we break this up? Can we make this more palatable for this neighborhood that we don't block view corridors? And on the flip side, some of these townhomes that we're building that are 5 units just staring at each other and aren't one buildings do mess up view corridors for the individual units, but this is big and bulky, and I don't see the roof line being an architectural relief, and I do feel that it's too matchy. And I think the duplication is enough for me to say that I don't think we're there yet to approve it. Personally,
So do we want to discuss a continuance
I think that
rather than deny?
Mr. Inc. has definitely shown that he wants to participate in this conversation and design things that we want. And I think we do need to start holding our standards accountable if we can and where we can, and making sure that it fits, because we don't have a infinite amount of land left to develop, and these infill projects need to be the right thing for our town of Frisco. We're at a crossroads, and I don't feel like this is the right size and standards and meeting the, you know, personally, I don't think there's enough snow storage in that tandem parking lot. And what do people complain about the most is when you're parking in the street and things aren't being met. So I personally would support a continuance, but would weigh in on all of your guys' thoughts.
What are our options?
But
I guess, what happens if it was denied? Is there any,
so,
we have to start over?
yeah, so first off, if it is denied, the applicant would have the opportunity to appeal that to the town council. That's the method or the avenue for the applicant at that point. Town council denied the appeal, then they'd be going back to the drawing. If, based on your conversation, that I think I don't know that there's consensus on all of the findings, one way or another. I think there is, I think on all sides, on a couple of them, the color as an example, probably needs it, but doesn't meet the intent. So there's some discussion there that you could, if you wanted to continue this discussion, just where are you at? So you could provide some direction to the applicant if they did want a continuance and it did agree to a continuance, to prepare a revised submittal.
Okay, so is it up for them to request the continuance or?
Agree.
I mean, you can continue it regardless. I would certainly have that discussion with the applicant if they were amenable to a continuance, or if they would prefer to push forward.
I mean, we could do a straw poll. Do you think that, I mean, I don't know how you all feel on it. You know, I feel like there were some comments that reverberated through all of us that.
I think we all had concerns.
I'll go on record and say I'd vote no at this point.
I mean, I would too.
I feel like I'd like to see it again with some of these comments, the color palette and the duplicity of the architecture addressed. I think being kind of the main points. We have others that are out
The
there.
only one that was okay with bulk plan. I heard the rest. were
Yeah,
not.
and yep. Odd.
That's odd.
That is odd, Andy.
I think you should give, if you are gonna continue, give him consistent.
Sure.
feedback.
So bulk plane is probably one that the rest of the commission had an issue.
Yeah, I would say overall, and the duplicity in it all, and so should we offer?
Yeah,
I guess I'd give the applicant an opportunity to respond to some of your discussions and see if the continuance is something that's amenable.
Mr. Inc., would you like to return to the podium and have this dialogue?
I guess my biggest comment is that I sort of take exception to the fact that it's even bigger than the massive development next door. I have a rendering that shows the bulk of the guys next door, if you want to see it. Or I'll pass it on to you. And we actually stepped down and intentionally stepped down. His are just big square boxes that fill up, the allowable space entirely. And we look smaller next to it when it's completed. The fact that the Kremlmeyers have bought into the project next door, kind of also helps it. And in fact, we entirely agree with you on the palette. We brought this last time with a very mountain. You've seen Pete's work in town, it's everywhere. The mountain rustic look, with mostly browns and different tones of that. So we're happy to change the color. We actually changed it to something, a lighter palette to try to appease you guys. So we're happy to go back to a more mountain palette. You're gonna like the next project even less, so we'll be changing the color on that one for sure. Hopefully we address some of the other massive bits and pieces. We're running up against being able to construct this year by continuing the project, but that's your prerogative. And it's pretty clear, I'd love to hear the straw vote. But we would like to have a very clear definition or, pathway forward. I mean, do we have to knock off a whole story on one side of the building in order to make everybody happy? So that it's, front to back is an easy change to if you change, you don't want the back to look like the front. The sides, if you look at the elevations, we have made significant changes to the sides of the elevations and they were mirrored, there was no question. So they're not anymore. If you look at it, there's 2 balconies on one side and none on the other side. We could actually flip that around so that there was a balcony, one on each side, and that would give a more variation to the sides of the building. As far as the bulk plane encroachment, again, that was a reaction to trying to, make this look much less, not bulky, but as one big mass to actually give it some more articulation. If you want us to cut those back so they're in the bulk plane, it's fine with us. We're not going to put Dutch hip on it. But we can get it within the bulk plane and that we don't care about. So guys got to direct us.
So
We're gonna be back next month and in a hurry if it's possible, so.
Yeah, it sounds like the applicant it would prefer a continuation versus a vote at this point in time. So
Can we get them on next agenda? I mean, we understand that it's a short season and you do this, but
Probably
please
pushing it.
understand our position of,
Our next meeting is July 21st, it's in 2 weeks. We would need your
I-
application
I was saying
materials within a
yesterday.
week, yeah.
I would say the first meeting in August is more likely. If you're gonna continue it, it would be to a date certain. I'd suggest the first meeting in August if that's doable for the applicant.
Am I allowed to speak at all?
Comment from the,
yeah, Brenda,
developer.
if you would come up to the podium.
I'm Rhonda Campbell, and actually the partial developer, I'm part of the developer on this project, along with another family member of McIntyre. And we hired Ed to be our architect, and we totally agree with you on the color, the palette, because I was talking to Ed about that before we came in and just saying we should have done more neutral tones. So we are definitely on board with that. We're on board with taking off the bulk plane, and if we can, I would prefer to get on July 21st if possible, if you think that's feasible for you,
It's a tough one. It's gonna be, I mean, anything's possible, but,
right?
and again, without a clear direction of what makes this.
But I think the big issue
Non-compliant to code.
is that duplicity, like how we change it up. I mean, I'm not an architect, so I'm not gonna sit here and tell you, like, I would like to see this. I've pushed more on Andy for some of that. But I mean, I think that's probably the biggest defining factor of where we're not fitting in the code right now.
Okay, and then the
So-
mirror images on both sides,
Yeah.
that's a big issue.
Yeah, from the front to the back, the
Okay.
two garage sides.
The one thing I might ask you to bring at the next meeting is, it might be helpful to see, the Galena side, with the 13 units and then your building next to it. That mean. Yeah, it would help me to see if that's, if that really is a step down.
A street view rendering.
A street
Yeah.
view rendering, of, 116, the 13 in your building, and that might give us some perspective on the bulk of this building in a way that you can't see when you look at the drawings.
So can we say continuous potentially July 20?
No, it does have to be a date certain on that, and again,
Or you
thinking,
have to renotice.
Yeah,
otherwise just renotice.
so. I mean, if you were gonna renotice, the earliest one would be the first meeting in August anyways, depending on when submittal came in, and knowing the current workload of the staff as well as the changes that may have to occur. We'd have to get this application.
So
The
August
staff
4th.
report, yeah, the first meeting in August is actually realistic. It's not realistic.
So can I move this for a continuance to the first meeting in August?
Second.
A second, I could provide more comments though to staff, or to the applicant.
Yeah,
if-
please do.
Before we
Yeah.
make that. Yeah, I mean, just looking at kind of this 1.1A, ensure new housing complements adjacent properties and neighborhoods through appropriate mass scale and design. I think, I'll go check out and look at the adjacent properties, but if you can just provide, an additional commentary on how you're meeting some of these standards in terms of, how this is compatible with what's around it. I think that's kind of what some of the struggle is here for us in terms of the scale of the building.
Project next door would have the same height limit, right?
It's
Yeah.
Yeah, so
It's
stepping
40.
down is probably not.
No,
since we're at the height limit here.
And 116 didn't do it that way. What they did was that, the way their decking came and all of that, you could see the building went up more at a gradual, at a gradual pace.
But the height, the ridges are probably.
The ridges are,
35 feet.
the ridges are right there at 40. Is it 40? It's
It's
40.
40
I
on
think.
this side of the street, but
Is that 116?
Yeah.
113. Are you talking about estates on Galena, or are you talking about 116? That was the last Campbell project you guys looked at. 116.
116,
And then you're talking about estates on Galena.
talking about
Okay.
estates on
Just wanna make
Galena.
sure we're on the same page.
yeah.
116 Galena was actually the same developer.
You
Mhm.
built,
Campbell
built it and
Right.
did an amazing
And it
job.
was,
And
the same
And-
developer. So, he's agreeable with that design, so I can talk to him about it.
Well, we really appreciate you taking all our feedback and understanding our position and. Oh, motion, sorry. Please take roll or a vote on the
Yeah, it's been
motion.
moved and seconded for.
Okay, sorry.
Commissioner Franken,
yes.
Lesmus,
Yes.
Commissioner Stabile.
Yes.
Commissioner Tain,
Yes.
Commissioner Withrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Potter.
Yes.
Well, thank you. And we do appreciate you taking all our feedback and we want to see you move forward. We just want it to fit into the code.
I guess what would be helpful is a little more specific direction on sketch plan review. So that, we can really read exactly what you guys are looking for on the first shot.
We'll do our best to sketch plan on your next project.
We'll try and be better in the next
There
project.
you go. Okay,
Nope, we take that constructive criticism. Thank you.
thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so moving on to agenda item number 2, planning file number MAJ 22 0007, a sketch plan review of the major site plan application for a proposed multifamily residential development located at 313 Galena Street, lot 6789, block D, Frisco Town Sub. Applicant Ed Ed Inc., Inc. representing Harris Properties LLC. And we will turn it over to Emily.
Yes, thank you, Kelsey, and other planning commissioners. So this next application is located at 313 Galena Street. And it is a sketch plan, or the sketch plan part of a major site plan review. This is just an overall project rendering. These were the 3D renderings in the staff report. Here is an overall site plan and the vicinity map. The applicant is proposing a new multifamily residential development at 313 Galena Street. The subject property is located on the north side of Galena Street, so between Galena Street and the alley. The property contains an existing single-family structure and a detached accessory structure. The accessory structure was built in 1904 and is listed on the Town of Frisco Historical Resource Survey. The existing structures will be demolished prior to construction of the proposed project. The proposal includes the construction of 2 separate buildings. So as you see it on the left image, Building A has access from Galena Street and consists of 3 units, with each unit containing 4 bedrooms. And then Building B gains access from the alley and consists of 2 units, with each unit containing 4 bedrooms as well. So in total, there are 5 units with 5 4-bedroom units. This next slide is going over the residential high density zoning district requirements. So this subject property is zoned residential high density. The application does exceed the maximum building height with a proposed height of 35.15 feet, where 35 feet is required. The application materials also show a chimney exceeding 35 feet. The UDC does allow rooftop elements to exceed the maximum height limit, subject to the Planning Commission finding that these elements are of reasonable balanced proportions. So with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission discuss the proposed chimney. The application appears to meet all other zoning requirements such as setbacks, lot coverage, and density for the residential high density district. Staff use the residential development standards in the UDC to analyze the application and is requesting that the Planning Commission comment on several criteria. So I will go over all of those, starting with access to the site. The applicant is proposing to use Galena Street and the alley, like I stated, as access into the site. Improvements to the alley may be required based on Public Works and Summit Fire comments, but will be reviewed further at the final stage of the site plan review process. That's when we get the referral comments back. So we'll have more formal comments from those agencies. The application materials show a sidewalk on the south side of the site connecting Building A to the public right-of-way Galena Street. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission comment on this proposed pedestrian access. And then as far as parking requirements, 1 parking space is required per bedroom, with 1 visitor space required for every 5 dwelling units. Because the application materials show the 5 dwelling units with 4 bedrooms per unit, 21 parking spaces are required for the project. Right now, the applicant is currently showing 20 spaces, and it is unclear where the visitor parking space is located and whether it is accessible to all units. The applicant will be required to clearly define and show the location and dimensions of each designated parking space at the time of final review. Additionally, all 5 units have a 2-car garage and appear to utilize tandem parking. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission comment on the proposed visitor parking and tandem parking. Moving on to facade standards. The UDC residential development standards require that all building elevations use varied articulation of wall surfaces on each facade. While a variety of building elements are utilized on some of the building facades, not all facades meet the requirements, as you can see on the provided elevations. Additionally, while the 2 buildings are not identical, the north elevation of Building A and the south elevation of Building B do not provide architectural relief, and the units appear to duplicate one another. Staff recommends that the planning commission comment on the proposed building elements of all 4 facades of both buildings, as well as the proposed building design, architectural relief, and duplicity between units. Moving on, the UDC encourages visibly pitched roofs and the use of dormers and breaks in the ridge lines. It is in staff's opinion that application materials do not illustrate breaks in the ridge lines of the buildings, and staff recommends that the planning commission comment on the proposed roof line and the roof elements of both buildings. The application materials do show 2 bulk plane encroachments on building A that total 224 cubic feet. There's an additional bulk plane encroachment on building B, but the submitted materials do not show that total cubic feet for the bulk plane encroachment on building B, so we will need more information on that. And then, like with the previous application, with planning commission approval, building forms may project beyond the bulk plane if they do not exceed the maximum height and provide substantial architectural relief. So again, staff recommends that the planning commission comment on this bulk plane encroachment. And lastly, we have building materials and color. The proposed exterior building materials include white board and batten siding, slate gray corrugated metal, composite trim, wood fascia, matte black metal garage doors, and then asphalt shingle roofs. Also pictured is a gray stone base. There was no material description with that particular material. And in the UDC, the guidelines state that pure white or black may not be utilized as the primary building color. So again, staff recommends that the planning commission comment on the proposed building materials and color.
Great. Thank you, Emily.
Yep, and then here's just a summary of all the comments, including the chimney, the parking, the architectural elements, and then material colors.
Andy, questions for staff?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. There's a mention in the staff report about maybe some dispute over what we're calling bedrooms. Can you clarify which bedrooms are, can you show us which bedrooms?
Go back to this site plan here. You can kind of see for building A, there's the middle unit is unit 2. So it's the middle unit that seemed to be where there was only 3 parking spaces, implying that there would only be the 3 bedrooms for that unit. However, the code defines a bedroom as any living area that is right next to a bathroom, has a closet and a separate door. And so that, and you can see it on this bottom elevation, that corner piece would be considered a bedroom, making it 4 bedrooms.
And do you have the same issue with that family room in the other units, but we don't need extra parking because of that?
Correct.
Oh, sorry, I thought you had a site plan up because I wasn't.
No, it's just so small on my screen. I can pull up the other site plans too, but the other units are laid out in a similar fashion. However, they have the 2-car garage with assuming the tandem parking right behind those 2 parking spaces that middle unit does not have.
So they can call those the other 4, they can call them 5-bedroom units if they want. They don't need any more parking for that because it's capped at
Correct.
4. So it's really just that middle
Right.
unit that there's a discrepancy.
Mhm.
Okay.
While we're still on that drawing, where is the 3rd parking space for that unit?
So there
I can
is
see the
a
tandem in the
slight
garage.
sketch on that curve driveway. And so those are part of the comments.
That curve is
See
it,
it
That's what
on
I'm assuming
the
I would need
landscape plan,
clear
A100.
dimensions and parking. Standards shown.
She didn't get enough detail on the parking spaces to be able to adequately analyze whether or not it's fully.
we don't even know where that 3rd parking space really
Can
is.
you show sheet A100 real quick? Because it does kind of show exactly where that parking space
I
is.
looked and I couldn't
I know
find
it's on
it.
It has very faintly. What was that one?
It's the 13th page of that PDF, of the PDF we've got. I guess that's different than what you're looking at.
Oh, no.
Big plans in there. Yeah.
Page 13, you said?
Of the PDF we got, yeah, it should be
Okay,
sheet
let's see.
A100.
This one?
Oh, wait,
Yep.
maybe it's a 12? Wait.
Yeah, it's,
Here's what I've got. Father. That diagonal line, that's a diagonal line across the box of the parking space. Same thing happens as they show it.
yeah, you can see it here too, that like kind of squared in,
Yeah, and then there's,
little like. For parking.
Okay, so you have 3 cars.
One,
Wow,
It's
two,
not
Yeah.
letting me.
3 car tandems. So hope you're the front that needs to leave first.
3-car tandem. I think you said that right.
Yeah. Wouldn't you?
and the third car is in front, parks in front of the neighbor's
Stairs.
stair.
Yep.
No, because I think that's the.
Get out of here.
Right. My Adobe is updated. Yeah.
Do you for question? Do we need to take a 5-minute break?
I just did.
Okay, but it seems like everybody,
I just did it.
other people, are we good? Or keep charging forward?
I'm gonna go to a place that, in the staff report, and the staff report becomes part of the record, and I continue to have problems. We talk about protecting the character and livability of Frisco's residential neighborhoods. On page 4, guiding principles. And we talk about 11C, to strive to create an appropriate balance of full-time residents, second homes, and short-term rentals to maintain a diverse and vibrant community. Now, every project that we have seen lately is potentially short-term rental or part-time residents.
Second
People.
homeowner, yeah.
We just saw statistics that 45% of our residences currently are second homeowners, 20% are short-term rentals, which only leaves the rest of us to be full-time residents. How does this, adding another 5 units to either short-term rentals or to second homeowners, continue to create an appropriate balance of full-time residents? How does it do that? By highlighting it, we say that it does. And I would argue that we need to unhighlight that and say that it doesn't add to the mix in a positive direction.
No, I think that's certainly a fair statement. The challenge is that I don't know that there's any way that you can foresee or foretell the future use of a particular property.
Mhm.
We can make an assumption that it's gonna be a second home. We can make an assumption that it's a short-term rental.
And
It's gonna take an actual regulation. That's a guiding principle in a community plan that's intended to direct policy, not necessarily a development.
But we're supposed to look at that policy and use the best of our ability to look at it. I mean, I have the same problem with 2.1B. And 2.1C, 2.1B says provide opportunities for balanced mix of housing and services to support local businesses, employees, residents, and visitors. And again, are we doing that? To develop and infill occurs, 2.1C, as development and infill occurs, ensure the town's overall mix of land uses remained aligned with community goals. And so, and then I wanted to go, since I'm on my thing, the purpose of the RH district on page 5 is to allow for high-density residential development that is in close proximity to commercial activity and to provide for a broad mix in the housing type and cost for all residents. And as I look at this project, does it do that? And I have to try and answer that question.
Certainly, and that certainly is up for every planning commissioner to consider whether or not that does meet that. What that doesn't say is every development needs to include that mix. If you
Understand
look
that.
at the RH district as a whole, do we have a variety of different housing types in the RH district as a whole? At this point in time, yes, we do. If it all redevelops to be this, then maybe we won't. But right now, I would say we do have a balance. But again, that is up for the planning commission to individually decide on.
Yeah, that would be an interesting discussion at some point, because I can hear our attorney 5 years down the road, as we deal with one more of these developments along the RH and Galena. And we say, no, now we've reached the limit of how many of these we can do, because the RH district purpose set. And we say, no, this one we're gonna turn down. And he's gonna look at us and say, that's a taking.
I don't know that he'd say it's a taking, but I'd say maybe you're not following the code.
So, anyway, how it, since we have the town right-of-way issues, on, both on Galena and on the 4th Street alley, what are we gonna do to protect that? Cause we've already on Granite, as we're talking about taking up the full right-of-way, we have people complaining that, you know, they've been parking there and we've approved that. How do we prevent that from occurring? I mean, even
Are you referring to use of the right of way or park?
the right-of-way, how do we protect it so that the use of the right-of-way doesn't happen in the future for these developments?
So, and going back to the complete streets plan, and maybe is a discussion on that, and we, as you know, we adopted this complete streets plan. It lays out guidelines on how we should look to develop our streetscapes in the future for all of our downtown streets in the core, including Galena. The alley actually on the north side of this property isn't included in that because that's outside the downtown
Right.
core. But with that, yeah, I think certainly the complete streets plan shows for the north side of Galena to have a rec path, if I'm remembering correctly. There's nothing on this site plan that shows any potential street parking.
I understand that, but when you maximize a lot to, as far as this one's gotten maximized. And we have extra people, I can see parking start to happen in front of a unit like this, like has happened at the 13 units, whatever that's
The
called.
states
So
on
the-
Galena.
but
The states on Galena.
Would this so-called sidewalk go in front of this building? Cause that's.
Yep, yeah.
So that would prevent them from
If-
parking
if we ever built it.
It is the town right of way. I mean, there's parking in the right of way, there's improvements to the right of way, and as we work to implement the complete streets plan over the next several years, we're gonna be having some discussions, even as an example, the town center, and the other Feldman project on Granite Street. The town approved sidewalks in the right of way, which are not where we want them to be. So we will be removing that sidewalk and replacing it to follow the complete streets plan at some point in the future.
And there is no internal sidewalk in here, is there?
Is a small section of sidewalk on the south side of building A. You can, right there, yep, Susan is highlighting it, so it's minimal.
And that allows for people to get to for everybody to get to the dumpster that's going in there?
That's for you to comment on with the pedestrian connections.
Okay,
Any other questions?
I'm done. I'm
Dana,
probably
questions for
taking a
staff?
vote.
No question, thank you.
Jessica?
Would you put back up that slide that you wanted commissioner comments on?
Oh, yes,
Look at the sheet, or you're gonna look at?
I think we have the parking comments taken care of.
Proposed chimney exceeding the maximum height limits, is the chimney, and this might be a question, maybe you know, but it might be a better question for the applicant, is the chimney functional? Or is it just an architectural?
That would be a question.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I think that would, I don't know, drive my decision. I guess I'm just still having a hard time with the substantial architectural feature and what that means, because that is so vague to me. But yeah, if you want to go to the next slide, I don't have a ton of comments on that. I don't know. Pedestrian connections and proposed visitor tandem parking. the pedestrian connections, could you recap what those ones are?
Yep, so here, that is commenting on the sidewalk. You can see it on the south side of,
We're just talking about that one little.
right, those are the
Okay.
current proposed pedestrian connections. So, per UDC guidelines, it states that multifamily development should have connections to either existing pathways or right of way. There is no existing sidewalk on Galena Street. That would come at a future time with the redevelopment of Galena Street.
I would just say as there's opportunities, you know, that's a great thing. I don't know how many opportunities there are in this site necessarily.
Right.
Um, Going back to, I guess, your next list.
So is.
Do you have any questions?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, we're just on questions
Oh,
for
I
staff right now.
apologize.
No
I'm
problem, no
totally
problem.
Yeah, no questions. I
No
apologize.
worries, it's your very first. Ira, questions?
No questions. I certainly like to continue Robert's.
Yeah, we will
li-
definitely
I mean-
have lots of comments for sketch plan, but
Yeah. I mean, I can make it a question.
Jeopardy? No.
If we're supposed to have a housing mix and if we're supposed to try to make it consistent with the flavor and the lifestyle up here, why don't we have some more tools in our toolbox? For instance, we don't, we talk about STRs. Why don't we ever talk about LTRs, long-term rentals? That's a tool I'd like to see in our toolbox. And that's my question, and goes with it. It's ethereal, it'll go with another conversation that I don't know where we ever get to those conversations.
hopefully soon with council,
We'll talk
so.
about that after this application.
Okay,
All right, any other questions?
I have a question. Is the alley a right of way? No. Yes.
Mhm.
So do we need pedestrian connections to the alley?
I guess I wouldn't think so.
So I think as part of what I will say as part of the next step in the process, the agency referrals, this went to DRC. I think there's a number of comments from both the fire department as well as Public Works regarding that alley and the condition of that alley for access and fire access. I suspect that it will be required to pave that alley and improve that alley, because right now it is a dirt alley in order to be utilized as access for this project. But we don't have that answer yet. As far as connections to that alley, it is technically a right of way. So if there is access from the is it building 2, the one that building B that fronts the alley, I would think that's.
Did Maybell, were they required to pave their alley for access by the fire department over on Second? There was was in Maybell, Second and Teller there.
Yeah, so one of those did pave half the alley, and the town is actually paving the other half of that alley this summer. And I'm not sure if it's Maybell or the more recent one.
Yeah, was it a requirement of town or of the fire
I
department?
believe it was a requirement of the town in that particular case, but I'd have to go back into the record on it.
Interesting.
Find that the pedestrian circulation isn't just to right of ways, it's also to interior features.
Right, like the dumpster.
Or visitor park. Right.
So I have no questions for staff. So at this time, Ed, if you'd like to come back up and give us your presentation.
I think that your comments are more important than any presentation I may give. So I'm very much open to hearing them. I agree that.
Just so it can get
I
recorded.
need to check in again, or
Yes.
am I logged
Stating
in?
your name again.
My name is Ed Enk. I live in 3074 High Road in Evergreen, Colorado. Thank you for the comments, and I hope we get more of them so we can fine tune this and get something you guys are happy with. I agree entirely that we need to have access to the right of way from every unit. And some reasonable access to the dumpster too. I would presume that you're allowed to at least cross your driveway to get to a dumpster. I don't think we could get there any other way. developer of this project has already met, well, we've met with Public Works, and he has agreed to pave that alley, improve the alley. Fire is mostly the one demanding it. So he's spending the money to pave the entire alley. We can't just pave half of it or up to his place. And do the improvements, and it's going to be paved such that it can handle the, whatever it is, 50,000-pound fire truck. So it's a substantial cost that he's willing to absorb. So other than that, the color palette, obviously, we will be changing. That's not an issue, but there should be no mirroring in this one. I think that we could probably improve on the elevations that face each other. The two rear elevations that nobody's gonna ever be able to step back and see, but I think they could have some more variation to them. But other than that, I'd like to hear your guys' input.
Yeah, we'll do questions for you and then open to the floor again and then give you our honest feedback. I already have questions for the applicant.
It was mentioned that chimney, is it functional? What's it doing there?
It's architectural. I mean, we don't use chimneys anymore for
Right,
anything.
because they're
right? So
gone. There's
if-
fireplaces,
If,
boilers. all-
if, you know, it needs to be gone, it's gone. I mean, it's an architectural feature entirely.
And then how did you end up violating the 35 foot by 0.15?
That's a calculation error on my part, no doubt.
Oh.
There's no way that, I mean, our builders are happy to change a 612 roof to a 5.9, whatever it has to be to fit in. So,
Okay.
I mean, we're talking about an inch, 2 inches. It's probably within the error of the construction company, to be honest with you. And so we usually try to stay a couple inches below so that they can, we're used to dealing with bulk plane and try and keep them as tight as possible. This one could be, has enough variation in the existing topo that we could actually lower one of the buildings a little bit.
Mhm.
And that might be the cue that I'm taking from you guys is the only way we're going to get a 3-story building through your commission is by doing garden levels. And dropping the main level down into the ground so that we can get a full 3 stories, but still not get as close as we can to the bulk plane.
Would that then put living space below grade?
Certainly. Yeah. Not basement, but garden level, a couple of feet
Right.
down, something to get us away from the bulk plane so that we can get
Would
projects through you.
Would an egress window need an area well or?
Wouldn't be down that far. I mean,
Wouldn't
we're
be down
talking
there.
about, because it's a 42-inch requirement for an
Right.
egress window, and we're only talking about dropping it in a couple of feet, so
Okay.
it'd actually be easier to get out of than. But the problem is then you do have subgrade patios too. If you want to be able to walk out on a patio, then you build a little garden wall. We've certainly done that often enough to actually have a place to walk out the door.
Right.
And that's been the resistance right now, you know, to go out the back with a lawnmower or something out the back of the garage, you have to have an area well and step up to the grade. So it's inconvenient and it's, you know, and then the real problem is that the garage is here and the living space is down here. You can't get the garage too low or my civil engineer goes nuts.
Right.
So it's complicated,
Okay,
but not
Okay.
impossible.
Questions for the applicant, Jessica?
Yeah, I guess just the philosophy on all 4-bedroom units. I mean, I know you're not, not.
I don't think the
developer.
intent was, I thought again, these go through so many iterations. I apologize. That small center unit. And again, it was the smaller unit. There is an 1,800, 1,600 square foot unit in this project, along with a 3,000 square foot and a 2,400 square foot one. So we are providing a variation. The 1,800 was only intended to have 3 bedrooms. I think that the shower got snuck into that mix. So we will make sure we comply with parking. That's just kind of
Oh, yeah,
obvious.
I'm not concerned about the parking or the office technically being a bedroom, but just we're seeing 2 projects and I know you're not the developer on them, but that are all 4 bedrooms. So is there just that their need for.
Well,
more
no,
bed-
they're actually 3 bedrooms.
Okay,
There are 3 bedrooms, 3 baths with a powder room, but if we put a door on the office, which we try to work into the mix, it is considered by staff a bedroom. So even if you have to walk across the living room to get to a bathroom, it still ends up being called a bedroom. So the only way we can get around it is to leave the door off the office, which, you know, it's kind of like saying, well, guess what? I'm going to put a door in later and, you know, I'm just pulling the wool over your eyes. And so we'd rather accommodate the possibility. And if it is a rental or if it's a big family, they're going to use it. They might use it for a bedroom. So let's meet the zoning requirements for parking versus everything. But we should never be short one parking space with, looks like we have an extra bedroom. And quite frankly, they were all 3-bedroom with family rooms on that lower level. And the developer asked us to put in a shower into each of those bathrooms. They were just half bathrooms on that first level. So now we ran into that conflict, and that's my fault entirely.
thank you. Other questions?
Robert, questions for the applicant?
I think I don't have any questions for the applicant. I'll have some comments.
Okay.
Nina?
Well, if we are to give you a lot of the same comments about duplicity of units and architectural or facades, are you willing to do a redesign or what does that mean for you?
You would have to, maybe, if you look at the elevations, there should not be, I mean, one's a triplex and one's a duplex, so back to front, street to street, they can't match. If they look like, 3 units that are mirrored down the middle, which is possible, then, that's something I should have addressed already. If the backs, which are kind of plain Jane because they are, facing each other in a little courtyard, if they're too matchy, then I can address that. And again, we split this project into 2 buildings because of comments from the 212, where one big building, I think it was Donna, said that would be really nice if there was space in between the 2 so you could actually go out there. And, so anyhow, we were trying to accommodate with 2 buildings, which is considerably more expensive for the developer than backing them up and not having exterior walls to build and windows.
And was there a question about where the visitor parking space is? Sorry, Emily, if I missed that.
Oh, it wasn't clearly defined in the site plan. It appears to be,
Can you show us, Ed, where that is?
it appears to be.
That's the visitor parking spot. We tried to get a separate driveway for the parking, for the visitor place so that it was really clear, but Public Works would only give us this number of driveways. They wouldn't, we tried to have a separate driveway for that and we're not allowed to. So, and the dumpster again, too, we can't have its own driveway because you're limited so much into the number of driveways allowed.
So, have some signage on
Can
it
you
that says
circle the
visitor
parking again?
Parking? Oh, okay. Or,
I think that it would be more of an HOA issue. That, you put that in the HOA rules that say, hey, this is a common parking space for everybody. Here's your spot, here's your spot. And they're designated, and that one is designated as common, putting a visitor only parking thing in a little residential neighborhood, it's fine. I mean, but it seems extraneous if you understand the rules of where you live.
yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, that's, yep, I can understand that, but I'm not sure how you go about defining one parking space any better than having it off in the corner and, it is going to be on somebody's driveway. But a sign would be no big deal to the developer. Not when he's spending a couple $100,000 paving the alley and putting in utilities and
Yeah, I guess if it's truly gonna function as a visitor parking space that the guy from building A can say, oh, you can go park back there, that's the visitor parking space to their guest. Anyway,
I get it. I haven't come up with a good solution for it, but I get the conundrum.
Questions, Andy?
Have you run this by somebody who's gonna service that dumpster to see if they approve of that location yet?
Actually, we have not talked to Waste.
It doesn't look like a location they're gonna like very much, right? They like to be able to back up to those dumpsters and.
I have to admit, we've actually angled that a little bit so that he can swing in there. So I'll make sure it gets
We'll get a letter.
approved. There you go with the,
You guys got the rest of the questions.
I have one more. Tell me about this triple tandem that's out there and.
There you go.
How that's really gonna operate.
you know, it is a 45-degree angle parking spot. And I right now have moved into a place that's very similar. And if it were my choice, tandem wouldn't be allowed personally, because no matter how you park in there, the whoever's parked in is the one that needs to get out. So, you know, if this were my subdivision, I wouldn't permit tandem parking at all. In this case, I think the key is that you're stuck with that tandem parking space in the garage, and that third parking space is just for your friend who comes over to visit. You have 3 bedrooms. It's not likely you're going to have 3 cars. And if you do, then you probably don't want this unit. But I can see your concern because it's mine too.
A quick question to staff. Is the triples tandem allowed?
I'd have to look it up, but I don't believe so.
Any other questions? Ira?
Oh, I had one. Maybe you have an answer. So with the paving of the alley.
Mhm.
Is the asphalt surface looked at differently drainage wise, public works for impervious surface? I'm just wondering if drainage needs to be incorporated.
It certainly will be designed by our civil engineer to drain and go somewhere, but nobody's doing it. Did you say impervious surface? It's your impervious surface, not mine. It's
Maybe answer that. Any improvements in the public right of way will have to meet the town's street and road, street and access, requirements and design standards, which require drainage, and they require, there's a specific design for the pavement design
And
road base, everything else. So yes.
and I think they've actually included some storm sewer in the design and the estimate we got. But yeah, maybe not. You don't have any storm sewer anywhere. We had some sort of drainage worked out.
Okay.
There was a big
The issue, it lost the last developer.
You can't look, you can't drain into the creek.
not drain into the creek. That was correct.
And we checked wetlands. We had a wetland survey done to make sure we were out of the wetlands, even across the alley from,
Yeah, because oftentimes, I mean, it's a lot more expense than just asphalt.
yeah. Yeah, oh yeah, it's intended, it's expected to be some cost.
Okay.
It's going up in the wetlands there, isn't there?
There is, we approved it.
Don't bring up that one.
Don't bring it back.
There's PTSD from that one. My question is, so if there is this visitor parking in the back, is there going to be a sidewalk to it?
I think that's a reasonable request. Quite honestly, I mean, I certainly don't want to walk around the block to get to that.
Yeah, just
Okay.
from like, I don't expect every sidewalk to come from every building to there, but I think there needs to be some connectivity if this visitor parking spot is going to be on one side of the building or the other, or one in front of one building or the other, that the other building has access to it without going.
Question.
So
When I
guess
should have
it's
thought of them.
It was comment more than a question. So I have no more questions. Does anybody else? Great. I will open the floor to public comment as there's nobody here in the chambers. If there's anybody online that wishes to make public comment on this agenda item, now is your opportunity. Please raise your hand.
There was a hand up, yeah.
Can you go down, scroll down?
Julie King, are you here to make public comment? If so, please unmute yourself. She's gone. I am seeing no public comment. So at this time, I will close the public comment portion of this agenda item.
For the record, we did receive
There
that
she
one
is.
public comment.
Oh, wait, she's back. Never mind, still open. Julie, your opportunity to speak now. Please state your name and address for the record and unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Paul Guglielmo, and Julie King, my wife, is here watching the meeting with me also. I've got a couple of quick questions. I don't really understand what when you spoke of paving the alley, you said that the Public Works Department decided that the town is going to pay for the paving and not the developers. Am I correct
Nope.
there?
No, the
Okay.
developer would be paying for that improvement.
Okay, thank you very much. And the other thing, when the town plows the alley, which the alley gets several feet of snow every winter, where is the snow storage going to be since you cannot put it in the wetlands?
Staff?
So I guess brief answer is that will be, Public Works will figure out where to store it. It'll be within the right of way of the alley, most likely.
The right of way of the alley is basically within the constraints of the alley itself?
So the alley right of way is actually 40 feet wide, and the paved surface of the alley will probably be in the ballpark of about 22 feet wide. So that would leave 9 feet on each side of the alley between the alley and property lines for snow storage and other things.
So they're going to be allowed to put it off to the sides of the alley is what you're saying?
Correct, because that is still public right of way.
Okay, so on the north side of the alley, if you were to store snow there, your
would
snow
probably-
is basically going to be sitting a few feet above the wetlands and will inevitably go into the wetlands. Have you considered that?
Yes, I suspect because of that same concern, Public Works will be focusing most of that snow storage on the south side of the alley, which would be adjacent to this property as well as your property.
Okay, and then, okay. And as far as ADA compliant and friendly, all these walkways you're speaking of and these entrances and exits in and out of the alley, is any talk of the ADA compliance there?
I guess, and this is, so, and this is actually should be, maybe, we're not really following the rules because it should be really, you have an opportunity for public comment. And then staff can direct staff, or I'm sorry, the chair.
I'm
can
sorry.
direct Staff to address those. Sorry.
Okay,
about
so
that.
I shouldn't be asking questions. I'm sorry. I
Well,
thought
you
that
can
was.
propose them as statements that we can consider in our considerations here
Okay.
for approval. But we can't really have like a back and
Okay.
forth dialogue. is
Okay,
really what
I
we're saying.
apologize. I
No
apologize.
problem.
One last thing. I would like to, at this time, request information on speed limits in the alley and potentially adding speed bumps in the alley, because now you're talking about 22-foot wide paved area with 9 feet on each side in a really narrow area, and you're talking about adding a triplex and a duplex with multiple bedrooms. So we're talking about a lot more cars going down this alley than have ever gone down here before, along with the addition of the Miller building in the wetlands and the potential duplex that they're trying to plan in the wetlands also. You're talking about a lot more units that you guys are adding. So I'd like someone to address speed limits and potentially speed bumps in the alley to keep it reasonable back here. Because I mean, let's face it, we are one block north of Main Street. The town's getting busier. We're building more and traffic gets off Main Street. It goes to Granite, it goes to Galena. As soon as people find out about the alleys, then they start blazing down the alleys. It's just a concern of ours. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Paul. We appreciate your comments and certainly we'll take those into consideration in our approval process here. Are there any?
And we're not approving anything today.
Well, no, but in the whole process, overall process. Are there any other public comments at this time?
Seeing none.
Seeing no additional public comments, so we will close the public comment portion of this agenda item and move on to commissioner comments. You're welcome to stay up here and listen to them. Let's start with you, Andy.
Yeah, I think, some of the, can we put the list of our questions back up now? I think, the chimney. I don't know. I don't really have a strong opinion on that. It does seem like it could come down a little bit. You could still have an element over there if you wanted it architecturally. It doesn't quite have to be that tall, probably, certainly since it's not functioning. Pedestrian connections, I think you've heard our comments on those. I think I'd certainly like to see connections to the dumpster and the visitor parking for all of these units. Architectural relief and duplicity. Quick question, are facade standards in this area, do they include how far the building would need to step in a wall plane? That's just in the mixed use, right?
It's only for non-residential
Okay.
buildings, which would
Okay.
include most.
Because it does seem like we have some pretty plain architecture facing itself. And those two facades, I think, even though the rest of us aren't going to see it too much, you might want to address those a little bit. The height limit, it sounds like you're going to fix. I'm not too worried about that. I think my biggest issue with this one right now is you're one space under parked. But by my count, you're three, because I don't buy that third tandem spot. And I also don't really buy the fourth spot for the northwest unit, the one that has to kind of 90-degree tuck under the deck. To me, that's not a functional spot. So I don't see how the turning radius works and how you get in and out of that spot that's underneath the deck and exactly perpendicular to the house, right up against the house. And there's walls in the way as you back up. That spot seems pretty non-functional to me. So to me, the parking is the issue that you need to figure out. If you can find a good, I sympathize with you on visitor parking. I feel your pain there. But I do think that we need legitimate parking spaces for the rest of the bedrooms. And I think two of yours right now don't qualify. So I see that you've got to find 3 more reasonable parking spots somewhere on the site. That'd be my main comment in terms of what I'd really like to see get fixed. Maybe come back, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I like this one better. I don't know that you're allowed to say that, but, I just, obviously as you anticipated you'd hear, definitely don't like that white. So appreciate.
Yeah.
Appreciate that toning that down and doing what you can do to bring in some different colors. I don't have a huge problem with the chimney, but it's not much of an architectural feature if it doesn't function, so I would just get rid of it. I do want to address all the stuff on the pedestrian connections to the dumpster, the right of way, and visitor parking, because I think you're not there yet. I also echo Andy's comments on parking, because I definitely, the 3 tandem parking spaces, will never work. So, yeah, I'd like that addressed as well. And then, I don't remember where the bulk plan encroachment was, so I
There's a
don't
few
think I
shed.
had.
Several
Yeah.
sheds.
So there's 2 on this one.
There's one,
Yeah,
one here. And let's see.
One up here on building B too.
building
I
B.
don't think those are. I mean, I go back and forth with the bulk plan encroachment because they're minor, obviously, they're not that big, but they also are not a substantial architectural feature, so. I don't see where,
Well,
We
it
can
can't
make
be
that-
substantial, I'm sorry,
That's-
maybe I'm not allowed to speak, but,
well, right?
and be small.
Right, no, that's true, but that element is not a substantial architectural feature that adds something so special to the building that would warrant the bulk plan encroachment. And that's what we're supposed to make a finding about. So, But otherwise. Still big buildings broken up, better, doesn't look so bulky to me. And yeah, those are my thoughts.
Robert?
Pedestrian connection, you've heard us talk about. I think the pedestrian connection has to go not only to the dumpster and to, and to the visitor parking space, but it's got to go to the alley and to Galena Street so that people can get onto Galena Street or onto the alley, you know. Is there any requirement for bike storage and on a fiveplex?
Not if they have private garages.
Okay. But they're gonna have bikes and they're gonna wanna ride, and so we ought to give them the way out of there. And I think that is in line with the code.
But again, can I ask you a question? No.
No, we're gonna just do comments right now and then.
And parking is a huge issue for me. The three is unworkable and I like Andy's comments.
And actually, I will interject here. So we did find the code quotation, 2 spaces may be permitted, but not 3. So.
And I would agree with you. I wish we didn't have tandem parking at all in this town, but we do. And so I do think that there is a duplication between the south of A and the north of B. Even though that, you know, one's a two unit and one's a 3, I think you've got to fix that. I have some issues with a ridge line. It feels like it's way too long, with it unbroken on both buildings.
Yeah.
It's
The
just,
very top
it's
one.
one, yeah, when you look at it this way, it's just one straight ridge line. And I don't like the chimney at all. And I don't like the bulk plane encroachments, because I don't think they're necessary. And then are we gonna? put
Yeah, I'll read that
His
before.
comments in place,
Mhm.
because I think they're,
And we can
they're
circle
valid.
back.
So, was there any other questions that I was supposed to address? Or comments I was
Oh.
supposed to address?
Roof and bulk frame,
You know,
materials.
material, color,
It's not gonna go.
and and I do like this a little bit better. I still struggle with the fact that it's a lot of building in an area where there isn't a lot of building right now. I mean, I look at that whole, I looked at that whole block, and even the units at the end, which are way set back. The what is it, the eightplex?
The step back one.
Yeah, that's way set
Funny
back.
angle one.
Yeah. This feels like it's just going to be a monument in the middle of a block, and there's nothing I can do about it. If you fix all the other pieces, it will meet code and I'll vote for it, but I just struggle with that. I like to keep the town as a mountain town, and it's beginning to feel like it's less mountain.
Jessica, your comments.
All right, I'll go quickly. The chimney, I think I, agree with what everybody else has said, on the chimney. I don't think there's a reason it would need to exceed the maximum height. It's sort of a useless chimney. I'd rather see a different architectural feature. Pedestrian connections, I agree with everyone else that we would like to see pedestrian connections for that visitor space as well as the dumpster. So I do want to say, I don't want you to come back and just say, all right, well, the dormer is gone, so we don't exceed the bulk plane. Because I do think the dormer is necessary in a way that it breaks up that long ridge line that we're talking about. I think that the answer might be coming it all in and then having a dormer that does, is compliant with the bulk plane. So same on the last one. I know that the comments are specific to this one, but I mean, I just do want to underscore that's not just the only solution is just to take away the architectural feature that breaks the bulk plane, but to be consistent with the goal of the code and the other architectural features. Color, yeah, I think you get that. I do want to say I really appreciate breaking up the building into two separate buildings. It would be really cool if there's a way to have that open space be functional for the two buildings, a place to gather. I live in a very overbuilt multifamily building. The only people I really see are the people in my hallway, and there's no really community space for everyone. So that'd be a really cool thing that you could work with to enhance the livability of these units. I'm sure you're kicking yourself for showing that ridiculous tandem parking right now that everybody's latched onto. I wonder if a solution would be, maybe you don't need that type of thing, and maybe you drop one of the units down a bedroom, and then you're also, getting some of that variation that I think some of these lofty goals in the code are looking for that aren't perfectly codified in some of the stuff that Robert Franken is touching on. So yeah, I would play with that. I think you got, something you can work with here and work to perfect. So that's all I got.
Great. Ira?
I won't be repetitive, but we talked about the color, the pedestrian connections, on that. I'm really glad that Robert mentioned the ridge line. Because I keep sitting here, I have that, looking at that right here, so I think that long ridge line is barn-like and needs to be addressed. The chimney, for me, it's a vestigial organ. I don't think we need it. I'm good.
All right. I'm going to read for the record, Commissioner Gleason's comments on 313 Galena. He states materials illustrated in this design are absolutely unacceptable. Bright white buildings should never be allowed in Frisco. There's basically no precedent for this. This building will be extremely out of place with these materials. Board and batten siding design makes this project feel like an enormous barn and should be reconsidered or utilized in localized areas. The overall design looks very simplistic and is exacerbated by lack of window or door trims. The proposal does not respect the human scale and appears generally too large for its surroundings. As for bulk plane and height, a building this massive on residential street with no topography should absolutely be required to fit in the guidelines with no exceptions. The architecture has, I don't think.
You forgot to
You
finish.
didn't finish that statement, so. Final statement, the proposal will, when taken in conjunction with 212 Galena, comes across as two projects that the proposer is trying to use as a statement piece that are uniquely identifiable. This is an unacceptable approach to building designs in Frisco. Projects should blend into the entrance, the streetscape, not attempt to be signature items and blatantly stand out by scale, massing, and materiality. So that's Commissioner Gleason's feedback for you. I myself, yes, no on the white. That's not gonna happen. You got that. I would really like to see this connectivity. I do like there's that two sites. How can you move through it, interact with it, be a part of the outdoors? I'm actually really grateful there's no rooftop decks on this one. And that's a huge win, I think, in standing out and differentiating yourself, but blending in with the community. I think by kind of bringing in, fitting into the code is going to be important with us. I don't think that the chimney is an architectural relief. I would like to see some differences in the materials to kind of break up that duplicity. I agree with Andy's comment on the roof line, that it's, or I'm sorry, Robert, you were the roof line. That it's just really long to me. It brings, my eye goes to it, especially when we're looking at the bulk plane map. But I think that you've got a great kind of concept working here, and that if we could bring it down and scale a little bit, I know that the alley access will certainly be dictated by the town and what goes on there, but I agree with Paul's public comments that it should be slow. We are seeing people finding anywhere to park their cars on big events. Sure, it's not an everyday occurrence, but back to the parking, that tandem obviously isn't going to work, but those are my comments, and it sounds like there's some more, so please.
I just wanted to piggyback on something Jessica said. If we could take a look at sheet A140, which is the perspective renderings, and because I only bring this up because we've seen this happen before when we gave somebody some negative feedback on those bulk plane encroachments. and then they just sliced the roof along. And what I'm looking at on these renderings is if you get rid of those, we've got huge, big flat planes of roof that they're breaking up. So I just want to emphasize kind of what Jessica said, we don't want to just see those gone and just huge planes of flat roof. Somehow that's got to get poked back in, so it's all within the building. So I just want to point that out because we have seen that happen. And yes, it meets code, but please don't do that. Thank you.
Any other additional comments? All right, well, hopefully we were more straightforward with what we're looking forward on this. And we appreciate your efforts and look forward to seeing your next rendition. So thanks for spending the evening with us. You might still be able to catch some music on Main, so thank you, Mr. Ink. All right, so we will close this agenda item and move to staff updates.
Okay, so first off, apologize for the doodle poll. I was
comedy highlight.
I received that same afternoon, I went to the post office box and I got my first double ARP envelope, and I think I was just in a senior moment. So
For not like at any point holding it.
I was like, do I just not know how to
no,
use this?
I was having a special moment. So moving on. So thank you for all completing that and apologize for the town council, that dinner moving, but we do have a new date after the doodle poll. It looks like August 23rd works for everybody except for Ira. Are you available to 23rd?
We'll take a look here. I think
That was the
so.
most available date for everybody.
Well, as of right now, wide open.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and plan that for the planning commission town council dinner for August 23rd. Save the date, 6 p.m. That'll be a great opportunity to discuss things like, I don't know, historic preservation as an example, or inclusionary zoning, or how do we actually,
When was it scheduled? So I can just move it.
it was initially,
The
well,
9th,
it
12th.
was, it was
July
intended
12th.
for July 12th. It just didn't happen.
And is this part of their agenda?
Yes, it'll be a working dinner, essentially a work session between their actual work session and the regular meetings start at 7. So
7 for us.
and we'll be providing you dinner and
Well, about time. Will we be getting dinner back? Is that a part of the update that? Definitely not.
And snacks or snack.
We'll work on some snacks and some
Why are we
water.
so
Getting that
anti-feeding
back.
us?
We'll get some snacks.
That
and
was
water
one of the
back into
perks
the
of coming
agenda.
here.
Okay. Well,
And
Okay,
county
good.
does much better at feeding us, just to
The
put it on the record.
So why definitely not?
I think the logistics of it with like, for town council, we know we're always having a meeting, so and the planning commission, 10 Mile and everything. They have a caterer that they can count on to bring in food, but sometimes we have no meetings all month, and so that
For 3
caterer
months.
can't count on our business, or if we just have one agenda item and you guys are in and out. You know what I mean? So it's kinda
Potluck
like-
style, should we start bringing?
You're welcome to.
Who's got a good meatloaf?
I think we can bring up snacks and sodas. Yeah, just.
Yeah.
just-
Something, just
snacks.
in
Yeah.
the.
We'll come. So yes, so thank you for that. We'll have an agenda for that meeting, so that discussion will be a good facilitated discussion between the planning commission and town council on what their vision is, what the goals are, what upcoming projects are that will, and it'll be also an opportunity for you all to say, you know what? These are things in our code that are not working, as we pointed out. I mean, are we achieving those desired balances? Well, as was pointed out, if we are getting a variety, a 5-unit development from a 1,600 square foot unit up to 3,000 square foot unit, that's some pretty good variety. They might all be short-term rented. They might all be second homes. Maybe a couple of them will be locally owned.
But
The
does it-
only way to guarantee that something's gonna be a local worker is if it's deed restricted. The only way to require that is through inclusionary zoning and requiring that one of those units is deed restricted. So far, that's not been on the table.
Isn't one of council's objectives to increase the amount of local residents?
Yes.
And we're not doing that very well.
I don't know, not necessarily through individual development approvals, but we are through a lot of other actions that we are working. And so that's again, where we take policies as a whole, we're developing within the next 5 years, we have a plan to double the number of deed restricted units in the town of Frisco from about 156 up to 300. That's we're gonna do 22 of them over at Granite Park. That's 619 Granite.
That's.
CDOT.
CDOT.
Okay.
There's been a few names. So
Am I Galena or Granite?
there's 22 right there. If we, through our housing helps program, we're hoping to do 4 to 5 units per year through that. So in 5 years, that's 25 units. Granite Park, there's 22 units. The Colorado Workforce Center, that's 602 Galena. We're working on that and gonna be developing that. That'll be 35 to 40 units. Glassman could be a whole nother thing. So that doesn't even count potential private development projects.
Third and Granite,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
the dirt one. Cause I'm like, that and CDOT, I'm like, can't we incentivize to make it bigger and better? Because it's not. It doesn't really bother any neighbors around it on those 2 lots, you know,
So
like if
that's-
you went a little higher or a
Yeah,
little
so
bit.
that is kind of the point. And we'll hear talk about the workforce housing overlay or their potential similar to the historic preservation overlay, where we can incentivize somebody to do some additional workforce housing by giving allowances on setbacks or parking or some other code thing. So we're working on code amendments for that. So there's a number of things that we are doing outside of just individual developments. Staff has mentioned inclusionary zoning and that concept to town council on a number of occasions. There hasn't been a huge appetite for that because again, that is a challenge.
8th Avenue?
The town did purchase a house on 8th Avenue and we are under contract to purchase a vacant lot behind that house.
8th and Pitkin.
Yep.
And what's going there?
Well, we don't know yet, but we are land banking both of those properties. The house will probably be used as seasonal employee housing for the near future. While we create larger development plans for that as well as the vacant lot behind it. So between those two, as well as some town right of ways.
I mean, my house is right next to it.
So-
I'm very much aware of that, but there's like 7,
Story building.
but you know, there's 7 units there of development, right, outright. And I'm like, I mean, it would be improved, developed, and I would love it to work. And
Yeah.
I
So,
just am
again,
curious,
we are
like,
starting to work-
why that's. And I guess these inclusionary zonings make sense where you're pursuing lots that don't have density on it. But I guess I just need to learn more about what that means.
And a duplex going in next to the wetlands house.
There's nothing proposed.
There's a site there.
Is it big enough for a duplex?
There's a property. So, and that property came up, as you recall, or the
For
Miller
our-
property
for our
came up.
first one, yeah.
As you recall,
I
we've
remember
changed
that.
our actual wetland regulations. So now we actually have wetland regulations since that
We have a
last
little more
thing was
teeth than we
approved.
did.
So we actually have some opportunities to get a better development rather than just plopping a square in the middle of the wetland.
Cause that lot is almost entirely wetlands as well, just like the first one was.
And you have to remember, it is a subdivided lot. The
Mhm.
town at one point subdivided it, so it does have development rights.
Right.
associated with it.
So you brought up before commission about when we did the development update or the code update, that it was gonna be this working document. And I haven't seen any discussions on how we continue to make it a working document, how we continue to fine tune it.
Well, and again, we'll see certain improvements coming up. We are taking changes to the density bonus to town council in a work session in 2 weeks. We just talked about the wetlands regulations. We adopted those in 2021 as part of the sustainable building code. So we will continue to propose code adoptions, or I'm sorry, code amendments. We've been a little short on staff for the past year or so, so it's been a little bit more challenging to
But
do
if-
that along with the regular work.
But if you do have ideas about tweaks or improvements and also other elements of the community plan that really need to be codified,
Mhm.
this is a good time to have that conversation. And I know that town council has been talking a lot about parking, both in relation to affordable housing and in general. They've been talking about what we have now for our density bonus that not very many people are taking advantage of. And then they've also been talking about how
Just parking, like taking it away, not
are
requiring
there
it or.
ways to improve it so that we can actually get more bonus units out of that section of code.
Park, you just can't park in a developers want to put more units on, they want to do the bonus, the deed restrict.
But,
units,
I
we
mean,
can't
isn't
market
that what we just complained about though, is parking and
Right.
needing it in that we don't have reliable transportation to zone out parking?
That's the whole
Yeah.
cause for the debate. Yep.
Have the conversation, and then the other thing that's been a hot topic for them lately is how our current articulation standards and how those gel with our sustainability regulations, like if we want solar on the roof, are we making it kind of too prohibitive with our articulation standards to fit solar on the roof? So those are some of the things that they've been bringing up a lot.
Really easy peasy
Yeah, so
topics,
Really simple.
simple, no contention.
23rd.
Yeah.
We'll.
Yeah, I mean, if we just took away the roof line standards and the roof standards, we could have these big blank roof lines and put a ton of solar on it. So you meet one goal, but maybe not
No heat
another
taking.
goal.
Just get rid of the height.
And then we don't have bulk.
We've all seen that.
You mentioned, an inventory of deed restricted units that we've accomplished and plan to accomplish. Are these for sale, deed restricted product?
Almost all of them, I think vast majority are for sale. There's,
Where we are hurting,
oh, we've done great on for sale. We're
where I think we need to go the other way
And do
and have
rentals.
long-term deed restrict. And that's where we offer the density, is if you're gonna build something that are gonna be long-term rentals. And that's,
The CDOT.
well, not the town to build.
Oh,
So
got
I'm
it.
not, I'm not suggesting the town build.
Well, the town is gonna build. So, and I think that's the job. So over the years, we've done housing needs assessments going back to 2000, probably the early 90s, actually. The town and the county as a whole, we've done really well creating for sale product, for ownership product. Frankly, because the developer gets a quicker return on investment. You don't have that long-term investment that's required for rentals. There have been rental projects in Breckenridge, Wintergreen out at Keystone, and others that have really started to fill that role. Frankly, town of Frisco needs to as well. We are doing that now. We're developing 22 units over at Granite. I think there's not a lot of developers that are interested in creating apartment rentals in this area just because of the return on investment, unless there's a significant subsidy, either through LIHTC grants or other outside sources. So you're not going to see a developer come in and build an apartment building. In fact, they're tearing them down faster than anything else around here.
What's happening on the lot on Highway 9 and Granite?
Lot on highway.
Feldman,
Oh, the water tower property. Nothing at the moment. It's been sold to a third party, so Mr. Feldman no longer owns that property. There is an active application for it to be used as a construction staging area for a particular project.
Is that project happening? I see the buildings have been lifted on
That
the
project-
cabins.
So, Chairperson Withrow is referring to the Foots Rest project. There is a building permit that's been submitted. They paid the fee for that yesterday, so we're beginning our review on that, and so it is happening. We've issued demo permits and moving permits for the historic structures that are on the building.
The sweet
on the
shop
property.
isn't moving, right? During construction, just
No,
daily
never.
routes?
That is not moving. That's not going to.
Oh, yeah, because it's that historical designation.
Cabins are, everything else is moving.
And is it, I mean, I would assume since we haven't seen it again, that it's pretty much the same project we reviewed.
Almost exactly, except the workforce housing has been moved
Moved
offsite.
offsite.
Yep.
But in terms of the big flying roof forms that we had a lot of discussion on, all that stuff.
And that's all and essentially changed. There's still a rooftop pool, which I'm sure you'll be thrilled about.
And then Main Street,
Rainbow Court. I saw a
looks
machine.
like it has machines in it,
They
finally.
were digging in the
And
excavation.
not texting?
But they're digging.
Too soon?
It appears to be on their own property. Good.
Library Lofts is beyond,
It's not active.
Did Jamie Haas ever
They're-
come back
they're gonna
on
demo it?
his Deming cabins? Cause he got approval on that second lot, right? Oh, I thought we did a Deming cabin without the historic overlay on that second cabin.
I don't think they ever brought that.
Oh, it was just all hypothetical? got it.
How about on West Main? Was that Mount Royal? That's, the.
So next planning commission meeting is, you will be having one on July 7th or 21st. There's 3 applications. One is the Little Red House on Fifth Avenue.
I
the-
saw
the
them
fourplex for
flagging
that.
today. or
The second
posting.
one is 80 West Main, and the third one is 105 Lusher Court, which is the Base Camp Studios. So, and I will not be here, so
Oh.
have fun.
Did 80 West leave here the last time with preliminary approval
The sketch plan review is all, so.
sketch?
I saw a sign at the log cabin at one point, saying-
They're in the MLS.
but I thought it was like, it was on project.
We have not reviewed it yet.
I think it's a duplex now.
No, so they submitted an application for sketch plan. I prepared it, or we prepared it for, we prepared it. It was nowhere close to meeting code, and as a result of seeing the staff report, they chose to withdraw the application. Or, I'm sorry, they chose to pull it from the agenda and resubmit.
Can you,
Because it looks different than what they, because they posted the original when we were gonna see in the MLS. Then they pulled that out of the MLS and reposted
I pulled
their
the-
new design in the
pulled the
MLS.
leaflet. I pulled the
Leaflet
leaflet.
doesn't need code.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, that couldn't be code.
Uh,
It was on your agenda, I think. But it was, there was maybe like.
But it's proximity to the road. Not an issue, right? So they really get to do that. It's pretty fun to stand in that parking lot and imagine the building.
Projecting it back into
Gas truck.
a gas truck into there.
Of course, we have this.
We love really difficult
See, this is
gas
what happens if you
stations.
guys don't have a meeting for 3 months.
we love the gas stations.
Motion to adjourn.
Somebody could.
Make a motion. Yep.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
It does help to catch
You're
up.
welcome.
Yeah.